Welcome back to another edition of the NoStoppingKev podcast. So excited that you all are back here with us today. You know it means a lot. So, if you can, take a moment, share the show with a friend. But we got an exciting one for you today. That I think this one is right up your ballpark. Or should I say, right up your court. No, that ain't really how that works. I just fell miserably at that. But nonetheless, Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing good today. I'm blessed. I woke up and I'm able to be on here with you today. So I'm feeling good.
Yeah, I feel good too, man. Good to see you. Feel like I haven't seen you this week. Probably because I haven't.
Yeah, that is true.
But I'm gonna just put it like this. Dr. J, one of the most admired, one of the most, I'll say, respected NBA, ABA players. Nobody really has anything negative to say about Dr. J. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Until now, because he done lost his damn mind. All right, so he dropped his all-time NBA first and second team list. And everybody was highlighting one person that was omitted from the list. But first, Dad, I just want to get your thoughts on the list. So I'll read out who is on first and second team. And then, I'll let you kind of share your thoughts on that. So his first team. And let me know if you want me to pull up stat lines on some of these guys, some of their accomplishments, because I had to do some digging to make sense of this. So first team, he had Jerry West, the Big O, Oscar Robertson. Let me put some respect on Jerry West's name. First team, the logo, Jerry West. The Big O, Mr. Triple Double himself, Oscar Robertson. Elgin Baylor. Bill Russell. And then your man, Wilt Chamberlain. That's his first team. That's solid. It's all right, But it's like, all right, cool. Like, who on that second team? Because you might not realize who was missing from the first team until you get to the second team. But you get to the second team, and then, you got Magic Johnson, Larry Legend Bird, Mike Jordan. I'm going to say that again. Michael Jordan, second team. Karl Malone, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Dad, how did Doc do on his list? I think his list needs some doctoring up, if you ask me.
I mean, like, on his set, like, you know what? Like, I when I looked at it and when I really seen it, I looked at his first team was before, like, his era, really, right? Mm-hmm. Before his era. So, like, and that may have been players that Dr. J seen play. Mm-hmm. And like that, because like, I mean, like all the ones that you name, when you talk about Jerry West is going to go down as one of the biggest ones. Now, Oscar Robertson, you still got to give it to him. Bill Russell and with Boston, you got to get and Wilt, Wilt was supposed to be one or two the best players ever. So, mm-hmm. I mean, how can you really knock that list? Now, Elgin Baylor, I really don't really remember seeing Elgin play. I really can't really recall Elgin playing, but the stories I heard about Elgin.
Yeah, Elgin's career stats, he averaged 27, 13.5 rebounds, 4 assists for his career. This is a guy that was Rookie of the Year, 1972 NBA champion, 11-time All-Star, League MVP once, All-NBA guy.
See, I don't know why I just can't really remember him right now. Like, I remember the name, and maybe I did watch him play, because you're talking about, even at that age, I was still young. You say 72, he came in the league. So, but I have watched games like back then. I started watching games back then because I remember watching the Big O. I remember when him and Kareem, won the championship mm-hmm. with Milwaukee, Jerry West, I remember seeing him, how he could shoot. So I don't knock that team. Well, you really ain't watched them play.
Yeah, I didn't really watch them. I kind of will see old clips. I'll see them featured in documentaries. Like when I was in Indiana with Devin's dad back in August, we were watching a series that kind of explored the Big O a bit, and it's pretty enlightening. But all-time first team, that wouldn't be my list. Now I understand there's some generational differences here, just like your all-time list might be different than mine, but I think ours would be closer to each other's than Doc's. I would. That might be a little experiment we can put together our all-time first and second teams. But what did you think about Doc's second team compared to his first team?
Well, you know what? His second team, his second team. I definitely would go. I would definitely have Mike, and I would definitely have Magic. Now,
you have them on the second team, or would you? Are you saying
well,
you would have them as your first team?
If it depends, like if I would do like Doc, well, how I'm perceiving that Doc did. If I would be picking it, like now that could be my first team. Now when I pick that would be my first team guards. All right. Let's say if I don't pick that era and I leave that era out where Dr. J picked, then yes, my first team would be Magic and Mike at the guard.
But it's all time, so you don't have to leave anyone out.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Now, would I make that my first team there, or would I make the players that I seen more play and I grew up really watching play? Would I make them my first team, or would I make them my second team? See, I think Doc made them his first team. That's all he did. He could have switched it around and put it to his second team. If he would have did it that way, would he still have a problem?
I get all that, but that's cute. And here's why. When you're saying you're all time, right, it got to be equal playing field. It can't be, I'm going to show respect to these guys because they came before me, and I'm going to elevate them above the guys that kicked my ass when I was playing. Because that's how I'm seeing it. It's like the guys that you were battling against, you kind of downgrade them a little bit just because, you paying respect to those that came before you. And I know Dr. J had a great career, champion and all that. I know he beat up on some of these guys himself. But I just think if you got your first and second team of all time, you got to then stack those guys up against each other. Can't be, here's the older group, here's the younger group. So that's my issue. So one, if you picking your all-time list, Dad, let me ask you this. At the point guard position, who you taking, Magic or Jerry West?
Who I'm taking?
Yeah.
I'm gonna take Magic.
And why is that?
You mean Magic over Oscar Robertson, don't you? Because that's the you said Jerry West. Jerry West is a shooting guard.
Correction, you're right. Magic over Oscar Robertson.
I would take Magic.
All right.
See, that second team would really be my first team.
I that's what I'm getting at. So let me put it this way: are you taking Magic and MJ over Jerry West and Oscar Robertson?
You know what? You know what's so funny? I just read something that Jerry West was saying about Michael. So if he would put Michael above on the team before, I think he would have picked Michael first. You know what I mean? So, and I just heard the things that Jerry West said about Michael. So no, I would Michael, like I'm saying, the second team would be my first team. Now my first team, I would probably have to make some adjustments.
All right, I'm interested in hearing what adjustments you would make.
See, like, you know what? His first team is definitely already my second team. Mm-hmm. Definitely already my second team. Now, like, it's hard. I say it would be hard for me to not keep Kareem in there. Kareem got to definitely be there.
Yeah.
Kareem would be there. Now, my thing is Larry Bird and Karl Malone. I see, like, now that be like, see, because, like, you know what, I would probably even try to maybe put Akeem Olajuwon as a forward in that pick. Oh, I would probably do that.
So right now you saying your first team would be Magic, Jordan, Kareem at your 5 over Wilt and Bill Russell over them 2?
Yeah.
And maybe get the Dream in there as your 4-man?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because that's
and then who playing your 3 spot? Who playing your 3 spot?
Now my 3 spot, that's where you know what? If we still talking about today's time, you can put LeBron in there.
Oh wow! What?
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying because the day and time.
Yo, Dad, you okay?
The day and time. I'm good. What you think? I hate LeBron?
You good?
But then again, since you did that, now I might have to go back. No, you know what? I still can't take away from his game. Even for what Doc said, I still can't take away from the LeBron game.
Yeah, and so I just didn't expect you to say that. Like my mind is blown. I didn't expect you to have, and this is your first team we're talking.
Right.
Wow. Dad, is that you?
It is me.
All right, I got to ask you a security question. Let me see. What's something that only you would know, or only my dad would know? Let me see. All right. You know your boy Rock, right?
Eddie?
No, Rock.
What Rock? I mean, I know a couple Rock.
Harrisburg Rock.
My cousin.
Harrisburg Rock?
Oh, yeah, Rock. Yeah, I just talked to him the other day, too.
All right, so when I met Rock, right, when he was like, yeah, we can check to see if this is his son, he did something to highlight our genetics. Do you remember what he highlighted that's the same on us?
Well, could it have been our chest or something he was talking about?
No, not the chest, but all right, I think you are my dad since you brought that up, because he did used to say that a lot. Other thing was the shoulder, the little bone.
Oh, no, yeah, I would forget that. I would forget that. All
right, cool. So at least you're aware. So I think you passed the test nonetheless. But yeah, so getting back to it, you want to know the thing that kind of took me out about Jerry West?
What?
He didn't have a league MVP. He had a finals MVP, but not a league MVP. So he's not even one of the best players during each of his seasons. He wasn't considered the best player in the league, but he on your all-time list above a guy like Michael Jordan, who dominated the league and is still regarded as the GOAT. That's when I was like, come on, Doc. Come on now. You need to prescribe yourself some medications, because right now you ain't thinking straight.
Let me ask you a question. Who is the NBA logo made after?
Jerry West, but I mean, shoot, pick a picture. It could have been anybody.
But it wasn't anybody. And why do you think it wasn't anybody? Why do you think it was Jerry West?
Politics.
Okay, politics. But you know what? For him to really still be that means even though he didn't win a league MVP, maybe even though he didn't get a league MVP, he still would consider, and you still hear talk about how good he was.
Good point. That's fair enough. Yeah. I respect that. Only because Jerry West was before my time. I know him as the logo. Now I know him as the guy that's on Dr. J's first list ahead of Michael Jordan. Jerry West not on my wall.
Huh?
Transcend generations.
You know, I think I had
this dude.
I think I had a poster of Jerry West back when I went to college. I think I might have had one of Jerry West.
I could see that.
Well, then Jerry West is from West Virginia too. You know, he was from West Virginia too.
But that you would pit. Where would Bill Russell and Wilt rank? Would they be on your second team? Because that was shocking. I didn't expect for you to downgrade those guys.
Well, like I said, depends. If I put my team together the way that he put the team together, then like I'm saying,
I don't like doing it that way though, because when you do it that way, the older guys are always going to win. That's just like if I do an all-time list and from my pool, I'm picking players from the 90s, 2000s, 2010s. I automatically got to pick the 90s players on my first team. So I don't think that's the way to go about it.
well, you know what?
So back to my question. Would you downgrade Bill Russell and Wilt to your second team over or under Kareem and Olajuwon?
Well, I already told you. I would. You know what? See, for me, they would be my first team, any kind of way it is. Now, if I were gonna make a team of people from that era and put a team together in that era, then yes, I would do that.
So Bill Russell, just to be clear, Bill Russell and Wilt, second team for you.
I would definitely. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna put them on a second team.
So you got Kareem. All right,
know what?
So here's where my next question is. Why Bill Russell 11 championships? Why is he then ranked under Olajuwon? And there's some good arguments for why this could be the case. And then the other side of that is too, Wilt Chamberlain, who some regard as the greatest of all time. Why is he then second fiddle to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
You know what? Okay, like I'm gonna say, I watched Kareem like play. I watched Kareem. You know what? The funny thing is the championship that I'm talking about was when Oscar played with Milwaukee. That's when Kareem was with Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. You know, and I watched them beat LA in the championship. Mm-hmm. And I watched him kill Wilt like for real. You know, Wilt was done. I mean, like really kind of done at that time.
On the back end.
On the back end. But like I'm saying, to me, like, you know what? Wilt got the record where he scored 100 points. He did all like that. But you know, you know what? Look what, to me, Kareem still accomplished. You know,
I mean, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar still leads the league in points all time. Right. He's still number one.
Right.
So I think you can definitely make the case for him there. And then I think about, although Olajuwon is before my time, I think
just about. Yeah.
I think what he was able to do moved the game forward, right? Because when you think about him being an undersized big, right? You can pretty say he was an undersized big. He was smaller, definitely than a guy like Shaq and some of the other guys he was facing. But when you look at the contribution he's made to the game by the work he did in the post, you have the dream shake. You have bigs and guards imitating the moves that he killed the league with, whether it's Joel Embiid, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Kyrie Irving. Like, no matter what position, no matter who you are, you learn the finesse in the post. And I would say the poster child for that was Olajuwon.
You know, and another thing I say about Olajuwon, you know what? I was a Patrick Ewing. Like, I liked it, Patrick Ewing, because he played defense. And I think Patrick Ewing started scoring more when he got in the pros. But I think he was, like, when he was in college and stuff like that, he was more defense. But Olajuwon ate Shaq and all them up. I mean, he ate all them up. Then, you know what? Like, I mean, like Michael Jordan said, if he would have a team too, he would pick Olajuwon. He said, because Olajuwon had block shots, steals, and scoring, and like some assists for a big man. So he was doing it all around, you know. So that's why I'm saying, like with Olajuwon, and I wasn't a Olajuwon fan at first, like that, because he was an undersized big, and I didn't think that, but he ate them up, man. You know what I mean? And it wasn't like he went and played forward on them. He stayed playing with them. He had to with Shaq and them. All them players got so much respect for Olajuwon.
And I think, you know, when I look at, if you want to know how I became a OKC fan, it's because I watched them take the Lakers to 7 games back in, I want to say like 2008 or something like that. But when you see these guys through history battle it out with the guys that you have at the top of your list, it really piques your interest, right? So I feel like that's what happened with you and Olajuwon. Like, he wasn't checking for him like that. But then you was like, yo, this a bad boy.
You know, when you break it down, just like, you know what, like when you just asked me, I would probably, I gotta put LeBron in there. You know, not that I really want to, but you know what, I really have to. And then, like you said, like that, if I'm okay, yeah, I'm okay, because you can't take nothing away from his game. You can't take nothing away from his greatness. Now, like I said, like I can understand some things or what Doc was saying, why he didn't really put him on his team.
Yeah, we can talk about that in a sec too. And I was just comparing LeBron's resume to some of these guys that were on Doc's first team, like a Jerry West and Oscar Robertson and Elgin Baylor. You know, these guys have had multiple trips to the finals. These guys have, you know, their share of MVPs and other accolades. But when you look at LeBron, right? Because I was looking at, I think Elgin Baylor went to like 8 finals, won 1. When you look at the fact that LeBron is gone, like 10 out of the last 11 years or something like that, like he's been there throughout a decade. Like for a decade, if you watch the finals, you were watching LeBron James. That's mind-blowing. Like to think for a decade, when the finals rolled around, you were watching one man versus whoever. Talk about king of the court. That's why he has to be on the list, right? To go along with his individual accolades. But Jimmy Butler said it best. He was like, if you want to win the NBA Finals, if you want to be a champion in this league, you got to beat LeBron James. When the last time you heard someone say that about a player? Probably the last one was Mike.
But you know what? LeBron. But you know what? LeBron ain't win all them championships. And you got to remember.
How many does he have, though?
He got 4 now, right?
Yeah, 4 out of 10 ain't bad. That's better than 1 out of 8.
Yeah, but see, like, you know what? See, I still agree with Doc sometimes. But you know what? He had to rip and run and switch and do this and do that.
All right, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. So Doc didn't include LeBron because he said he led the charge in creating super teams. Right? But one, I don't think that's true because many will say super teams have always existed. You look at some of those Laker teams, it's like, sure, that team is stacked, right? So I think the difference is now with evolution of the game, with evolution of the sport in general, or the power structure, the players have more freedom to do things. So like back in the day, you would get drafted to a team and you would spend your whole career there. You couldn't leave until, you know, guys spearheaded free agency and then giving players more power to sign with different teams, right? So I think now, you know, because a guy calls up his friends and say, hey, let's link up, let's play together. Let's do this. That gets knocked on, but an organization can basically do the same thing. Boston Celtics when they got KG, Ray Allen, and that's fine. I think it's an old way of thinking.
But I mean, like, it probably is like old way of thinking. See, like, and I'm kind of old, and I think like that. And I mean, like, you know what? Players didn't leave, and like, you know what? Like Dr. J didn't leave Philadelphia to go somewhere to get a championship. He didn't call up. Like, he didn't call Moses Malone. Now, and like we saying this, he didn't call Moses Malone and say, "Oh, we need you in there. You know, you think about coming here." He came available. He was available for.
That's what happened with LeBron, D-Wade, and Bosh. They all were free agents at the same time.
But not when you. But I'm saying Dr. J wasn't calling up and trying to call like Moses up and say, "Yo, Moses, we need you to come to Philadelphia and take us to the promised land."
To that point, I don't think that's what LeBron and them did either.
You know what?
D-Wade didn't know. No one knew where LeBron was going. No one knew. Even D-Wade didn't know he was coming.
Like, you know what? It was talked about him talking to Bosh, even like before Bosh even went there.
Sure, they all talked. Like, hey, this is a possibility. Like, where might we go? But I mean, D-Wade was locked into Miami, and LeBron said that's where he was going. So it's still, it's not like it was signed, sealed, and delivered before LeBron made the announcement. Like,
but you know what? How you know it wasn't? How you know? You know what? It was funny. Like, you know what? Back when I was in high school, Horace, you know what? Horace wanted me to transfer to Dobbin because, like, you know what? We figured if both of us would have played together, and like we could play together, and we did play together because we played like a lot of times on a Sunny Hill All-Star teams, and when we went to places together, and then like we even played in the Baker League together. So me and Horace could. So in high school, Horace, like during the summertime, he was saying, Kevin, go. I mean, it's always been going on, but like and he asked me to come to Dobbin. Now we were number 1 and number 2 in scoring in the city that year. So it figured like even with West and all them being powerhouse Overbrook, we might have could have took them out together, because see now where they all concentrated on one of us, now they couldn't concentrate on one of us.
Right.
That would have made it so much better. But but like I'm saying, like even like you said, sometimes in NBA, but it was done differently. Like even with
the organizations had to put them together.
Right. So office had to do it, but it's like I remember.
So to my point, super teams have always existed.
Well, I mean, if things came, but players didn't leave and go anywhere. Like they stayed
but now
there.
Players jump around a lot. Like it's normal for players to, when the guys drafted, like take the Sixers for example. It's only a matter of time before we see Embiid and/or Ben Simmons in a different NBA uniform.
Well, you know what? You might, and we might
like
not.
We thought Westbrook would never leave OKC, but sometimes things happen. Organizations go a different way, and it makes sense for players to leave, especially if a team is going to go through a rebuild and you're in the prime of your career. It makes sense to go somewhere else where maybe you can win. You
know what? Players, like you said, players today is doing that more so. And because they really, it's the players that, like a lot of times, it's the players.
I think also players are closer to each other today. Like these guys grew up playing together, no matter where they're from throughout the country. They're playing in all the different AAU circuits together. And then overall, I would say there's probably a bit more of a brotherhood. You got some guys that work out together throughout the off season. So there's more camaraderie. And so it's like, it's playing an opportunity to play with your boys at the highest level. Why not? I'm just not a fan of organizations dictating everything a player does. And I don't think players should limit themselves to staying with one organization, because how many times do we see an organization just throw players away? Like, yeah, I'm done with this guy. It's a business. Players, it helps level the playing field.
I still remember when the older guys, when I was coming up here, and like it was like a lot of them in Philly, but all in South Philly, but they all branched off and went different places. Because they used to say, you know what, if we all went to Southern would win the championship, would have won the championship so many times. So they said they wanted to spread it out and play against each other. And they was friends. Like a lot of them come up playing in the same schoolyard, playing together. But you know what? They spread it out and went different places. Because you know what? The competition and playing against the competition was more better than just having one team or something like that. That's what they told me they feel. But like you said, I think in a sense it's always been there. But you know what? You never seen, like even Kobe. Kobe didn't jump ship and leave when Shaq left and they went down. You know what? He waited till L.A. put some stuff back in place.
Kobe almost left L.A.
Huh?
Kobe almost ended up in Chicago.
He almost. All right, almost. You know what? Almost, but he didn't. And we're going to look at the reality. But you know what? He wound up getting some players, and they picked some players, and you know what? They gave him some of the things that he wanted. And he wanted.
Sometimes organizations don't give you what you want. Like sometimes organizations are just there to sell tickets.
But you know what? They do.
Not all owners want to win.
Just like, you know what? Just like in Houston, Harden wanted Westbrook. They gave him Westbrook.
They gave him Chris Paul as well.
They gave him
Dwight Howard.
So they've been giving players what they do now. What do you do when he got them? He still didn't do anything. And he didn't really do anything in the playoffs.
Right. I mean, if Chris Paul doesn't get hurt that one year, and
I think so too.
We might have a different champion crown that year.
I think so too.
But getting back
think so too.
Getting back to Doc's point on LeBron, one, I think it's unfair to say he's kind of led the charge in creating super teams. I'm also, my other thing with that is going back to my point about players having more power. I think LeBron maybe has been a bit of a GM in some regards, but also who better to know, like if you're building a team around LeBron, who better than to say, hey, LeBron, who we need to get here to make you the most successful? Because no one knows his game better than him, right? No one knows. Like, there's so many things that goes into winning a championship beyond talent on paper, right? That talent on paper has to then convert to chemistry, which you hope converts to winning a championship, right? So I think when you think about players' relationships off the court, you know, who's going to be willing to put their ego aside, buy into the system? What coach do I need to be there to kind of work in tandem? Because when you're talking about a LeBron James, you're talking about a guy who very well is a coach on the floor. Then you talk about Bill Russell being a player coach. That's essentially probably what you have with LeBron in some regards. So you got to have all those dynamics worked out. So if I'm a GM, shoot, LeBron's my assistant GM because, one, it's proven to be a successful formula, right? Like, he knows guys that he can bring in that can be contributors. J.R. Smith. Like, you look at J.R. Smith, you think of him as a clown, the guy that makes the huge mistake. But even before then, you're like, okay, they got JR. He going to hit some shots. But he made JR into a solid role player, I would say.
Well, I mean,
JR was solid in Denver and New York. So the potential was there. I think LeBron just, you know, he understands what he needs to have in his tool belt, and he uses the people around him effectively.
Well, I'm not even talking people like JR. I'm talking about the like in LA. Like, you know what, this year championship
Davis
or the year, you know what, I wouldn't even really, you know what, because of the corona and all that kind of stuff, I really wouldn't even really call that a championship this year. That bubble, the playing in the bubble, I wouldn't really even say that.
Why
because
not,
like, you know what, because I think it took away from the season. It really took away from the season. Yeah, we got basketball back, but you know what? It still wasn't like a real season where you had fans, you had all this stuff. So I wouldn't really call it. It was a different year than any other year.
Yeah, of course. But you know why I still count that? Is because if there ever was a chance to dethrone the king, in the bubble was that opportunity. And here's why. Without the fans, right? Without the fans that you mentioned, there's no adversity. Like, there's playing on the road in a hostile environment with that pressure. You neutralize that. So that's why you see a lot of these guys come alive, because it's a lot easier to shoot when you're in the same gym with the same backdrop. You don't got the difference in depth perception and all that. You don't got somebody calling you everything but a child of God. You can just play basketball and hoop.
You know what? I would have rather have all the other things that you just named in a game. I mean, I would rather play with the crowd. I would rather play. I would rather play with all that, because you know what? That makes me perform even better.
Some people. You know what? There's also some teams that are bad on the road, and their records show that, right?
Okay.
It's different on the road.
This is what I'm saying. This is why I don't consider it. Every other year we had that. This year we don't have it.
You can't just say, "Oh, this doesn't count," because everybody's playing the same game. It's like you know everybody's playing with the same ball.
But then everybody, all your teams didn't even really make the playoffs. And look the way that it was. It was so much different. It was different.
Everybody that was in the playoff running was there.
It was different. It was totally different.
But you just hit me with some fake news. Everybody that was in the playoff running was in the bubble. We had a full playoff scenario.
Look the way that some teams, look the way they even went to pick the playoffs. How some of the teams even made it.
What you talking about?
It just was totally different this year. And like, you know what?
The only thing that was different is the teams that had no shot at making the playoffs, that were out to running, didn't get invited to the bubble. They only took 22 teams to the bubble. Right. They adjusted the schedule a little bit, but it still gave teams that were on the bubble, no pun intended, a chance at making the top 8. But then they also have the play-in tournament as well.
You know, like, you know what, when the Roberts and when they started shortening the season, you know what, like for me, like this, just like what I'm saying, it's just was different when all this came about, and then when we had to stop basketball, period.
Okay, so when there's a lockout season, do those championships count?
When was the last lockout season?
I feel like it's when the Heat won.
You know what? I want to ask you. I want to ask you a question. Oh, I forgot the question I had right then and there. Oh, so before this championship, right? Before the bubble championship, LeBron was the king. That he won the championship that year before.
The year before he was out from injury. Remember?
So he wasn't the king then, right?
I know he's still king of the NBA.
Oh, no.
King sometimes loses a battle, baby. But at the end of the day, he gonna win the war.
When the last time he won a championship before this one?
The last time? Oh, it was his Cleveland one. Let me get you the year.
That was 2016, right? 16. So you think the year before, if he didn't get injured, they would have won the championship in LA?
With that team, I don't know if they would have won the championship, but he damn well probably got to the finals. Like, see,
and I'm not even gonna say that.
You got to give him the benefit of the doubt, because that Cleveland team that he took to the finals, even the Cleveland team that, I'll just say that the Cleveland teams that he made it to the finals with kind of prove he don't need a lot to work with to get there. Now in the West,
but it wasn't a lot in the East to go against. It wasn't a lot to go against. It ain't like, do you think that Cleveland team would have made it out in the West? Do you think the team with LeBron and Cleveland would have made it out in the West?
All right, here we go. So you would probably say that LeBron was able to carry Cleveland through the Eastern Conference because he was the best player in the Eastern Conference, right?
You know. Sometimes I'm gonna tell you.
Would you say that? Would you say that's true? That he probably carried them through the Eastern Conference because he was, in fact, the best player in the Eastern Conference.
Okay, we're gonna give him the best player. But what I'm saying
hold on.
No, but hold on. Let me say this to you too, and like take this in consideration a little bit too.
Okay.
Now sometimes it's the draw of what you get when you got to play all, like, you know what. The tougher the teams that might have your number or might have you might lock up and not even get the draw. You might not even get to play them because they might play the other place. So, like sometimes it's the luck of the draw too. See, because like I remember when we played in our conference, when I played in my conference tournament, when we won our tournament, like, you know what I did? I looked at the teams that we had to play, and we knew what game might be tougher, even though some of the teams that they've got nothing to lose can give you a good way to go. But see, sometimes it's the wear and tear that might beat you up before you even get to the final.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. And my thing is, too, you could also say luck of the draw in the West that year. Maybe he didn't see the teams that he had their number. He could have drawn the teams who he got them in his pocket. But my point about him carrying Cleveland through the Eastern Conference and him being the best player is because if you put him out in the West, a healthy LeBron, a guy who is the best player in the world, he's still the best player in the Western Conference. And so to that point, I would say, yeah, we probably could still see him in the finals. Depending on who they would draw. Like, because, I mean, if you're thinking about, let me go. I just want to pull up the Western Conference standings. And that would have been the 18-19 NBA season, right? So I'm going to just see who was, like, where they might have fallen in the standing. So Warriors were at the top. Nuggets 2. Blazers 3. Rockets 4. So, I mean, if I could see, the Lakers finished in 10th that season. Lakers would definitely, I would say, have been top 4 with LeBron.
I don't even know.
Probably 1 or 2.
I don't even think that year they was, even when LeBron was there and healthy, wasn't really winning like that neither. I don't think they would have been there. I think, if I'm remembering right, like they wasn't even gelling right then and there. If I remember right, you know, when he first went there, they wasn't. I don't even know if they would have made the playoffs. But one thing for sure we do know, they didn't make the playoffs. And we can say injuries did it or whatever.
I think if LeBron was playing, they would have found their way in there. Now, I do think they could have shut him down because they would have been like, you know what, this might not be a championship year for us. Let's save him. We're going to get Anthony Davis in here next year, and then we're going to give it a go. So, I mean, it could have gone even way on that argument. But at the end of the day, I think Dr. J was wrong for leaving LeBron off his list. I think we both can agree with that. Or
I may agree with that because I put him on the list.
Yeah,
I put him on the list.
So
like,
oh, go ahead.
I mean, for real, in a way, I feel though I have to like kind of put him on the list, and I would put him on the list now compared to somebody like I said, like I don't know what Karl Malone. I mean, like I could feel like Kevin Durant, you know, like should be there.
Yeah, I
can say that. I could say in place of like Larry Bird and something like that. I mean, like some place I could feel that Kevin Durant. Now, maybe if I would wait till maybe some more years or something like that. See, like right now, even though I say LeBron would be there and I put LeBron there, I would wait till he finished playing to put him on that team, or even do it like he did it.
See, I get that.
Huh? And maybe that would, matter of fact, maybe that could have been what Doc was doing.
That's not what he was doing, because he said the reason he gave for leaving LeBron off the list wasn't that he's still playing. So that's not what he was doing.
Right. I was just saying, like, you know what? For me to not look at Kevin Durant, not to look at Kevin Durant or somebody being in there, because like Larry Bird is good, but I think
Kevin Durant is better.
I think, but you know what? Then another thing that I gotta look at too, I gotta look at the time this is.
Mm-hmm.
See, it's like the time is like a lot different. You know, the way that the game is played, how the game is played today, it's like a lot of difference.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Gilbert Arenas was alluding to that in doing his top 5 point guard list. Because you got to look at evolution of the game and kind of weigh that in. So your list or your all-time teams has to have a little bit of the old mixed with the new. And so you got to weigh out kind of the way I would look at it is who was more dominant in their era, right? And sometimes that can be tough because you can have 2 guys that were number 1 in their era, but how do you measure who then had the better impact? See,
then even like that, you gotta look at the way the game is played today and how the game and what the game is. The game is totally different now. Like, you know what? It's like sometimes they were talking about some players playing in the day's time will be playing back in the 90s and 2000s, and then they were talking about how some of them would they be effective, you know, back then. See, like, and like, you know, they say like LeBron. What they said now, you're gonna say LeBron could play in any era, and maybe some players could play in both eras and be effective.
Mm-hmm.
But now, do I know if LeBron gonna be effective in that generation as he is in here? He's gonna take a lot more beating. I mean, LeBron isn't, but it's just like now how they just talk about the league, and then like just like now, how you talk about the evolution of the game. Is the game, and that's a question, is the game more exciting now than it was back then?
I would say yes, because they made the rules and things of that nature for the enjoyment of the fans. So I would say yes, the game is more exciting today than it was in the past.
To me, and you know, that's a question I was kind of asking myself, and I guess I'm gonna always be biased towards back then. I guess I'm always gonna be there because the game was a little bit harder. The day is like a little bit more easier. And I see the look on your face. What you want me to say? How it's a little bit harder?
Yeah.
You know, when a person was hand checking back then, do you
Mm-hmm.
think it was easier to get to the basket
It
than
was
it is
definitely
now?
harder to get to the basket.
But did people get to the basket? Did you still have?
Yeah.
Did Michael still have flying dunks? So it ain't like it wasn't exciting. Like now, I think before people shoot more threes and all like that during the game, that ain't unless that's exciting to you. That's not well. You know what?
I will say I used to think it was boring, but as I've gotten a little older and understood the degree of difficulty, for instance, I was watching Steph play the Sixers a few weeks ago, right? And at one point he had 25, right? I think it might have been middle of the third or going into the fourth. He had 25, right? Next thing I know, they're talking about Steph at the free throw line shooting for his 39th point. I'm like, what the hell? Like, the fact that he can just come down and hit like 4 consecutive threes and you know it's coming and you don't have an answer. And then when you start to look at like how is he creating space, that's exciting to me because I'm watching. I'm like, God damn! Like I need to go back and start hooping so I can see if I still got a little shake and bake splash.
First of all, he really don't need too much space. You know what I mean?
I know, but when you look at like sometimes when he pulls back and he's at the 3-point line and his defender is now below the free throw line, you'd be like, my God, like you wasn't sitting on the pullback? Like you supposed to sit on that pullback, George Hill? What you doing?
I mean, you know what? You know what? You got the same case with Harden.
Right.
In a sense.
And that's what I want to talk about that because you mentioned the game being harder in the past because it was harder for the offensive player because the defense was more physical, right?
Right.
The flip side of that in today's era is you can say it's harder for the defensive player because they're really kind of more at the mercy of the offensive player because they can't hand check. They can't play as physical. So I would say the game is in a way just as hard, but on a different side.
I don't see. I still like for me. I still don't see that. Like I mean, like you got players. It's kind of. It might be harder to guard, but you know what? It's because you know what? You making it easier for the offensive player.
Mm-hmm.
You making it easier for him.
So
you know what? You know what? You can't even touch you can't even touch a player going to the basket. So I'm saying that makes the game different. Yes, it is different.
I can agree with you there. It's easier from an offensive player standpoint. But as a whole, you know, I would say the game is still difficult.
But what I'm saying is and another thing where I'm saying people ain't doing it now. They stopping at the 3-point line and shooting. You know,
and that's just as hard too. I mean, it's difficult to shoot from out there. Huh? You think about the pressure that puts on the defense. Because now, you know, you're trained. I think
not allowed
talking about this. You're not allowed to what?
You're not allowed to play defense no more. You're not allowed. Pressure. What?
But G.O.A.T was talking about how guys were kind of trained to pick a guy up kind of with your heels on the 3-point line, right? When you got a guy pulling from the logo, Dame, Steph, who can consistently make that. And as that becomes more and more common, you got to change the whole defensive scheme. Like you might have to tell a guy, pick him up with your toes on the logo, but just think about how much that opens up the floor. It just completely changes the game as we know it. But yeah, Dad, I definitely liked your take. I kind of like this because one unique thing about our show is that we kind of have 2 generations represented. Right. So whenever we can blend the old with the new, and mind you, if we do an all-time list, you're going to have some guys from my era. Like you mentioned the KD, LeBron. You know, where do other point guards from this era, other centers from my era, rank into the all-time greats? And I know if I come with a list bringing too many current day guys, it's going to be like, oh, they're not there yet. But it's something to consider. So maybe we need to come up with, and I already know how your list would kind of shake out a little bit if we did this. Maybe we need to come up with our all NBA first, second, and third teams just to add a little bit more room. and then maybe we can combine the list, and then we can have a, father, son, first and second.
But you got to remember this era. Like, okay, like I am starting to like Embiid a little bit.
Oh, you acting different.
No, that's because he playing more this year.
He's more dominant. Like he's doing what we expected him to do the last few years.
Well, you know what? When you talk about Elijah Wan was probably to me now ahead of his time. Elijah Wan is probably a Joel Embiid, but Embiid can shoot outside better than he really can.
And he probably can overpower guys more than Elijah.
Yeah, right, because he's stronger. He's stronger.
He kind of checks 3 boxes. He can do the finesse game in the post. He can do the power game in the post. Then he can go outside and hit a shot. And then he breaking guys down this year better than
I'm saying he can handle a little bit. That's the difference in the game. And like, you know what, when we talk about I guess when we go to the next episode, some of that will come out too.
Yeah.
When we talk about guards and we talk about the point guard, because like, point guards to me and different point guards today, it's too different to me.
Gotcha. But yeah, that's about all the time we have for this episode. If y'all enjoyed this, I hope you did, because I know we definitely did. We love having these types of conversations. Whenever I get my dad excited and yelling, I love it. But until next time, big thank you for being here. Definitely check out our website, NoStoppingKev.com, and share the show with a friend. And until next time, peace
out.